That's Nick.
And that's Joseph. And today we're here to talk about Good Joe Bell, which premiered at the 2020 Toronto International Film Festival. The second feature directed by Reinaldo Marcus Green and stars Mark Wahlberg, based on a true story, and was picked up by Solstice Studios for the tune of $20 million.
$20 million? Mm-hmm. Wow. I didn't know that. Has Reinaldo done another movie?
Yes, Monsters and Men, which was at Sundance in 2018, which is also very much a social issue movie. Both that and this film, I see these as films as decades from now. It's kind of like how we'll look at social issue movies from the 40s and 50s, where it's like, oh yeah, that was going on then.
This movie, like you said, is based on a true story.
Mm-hmm.
It does take some liberties, which we'll get into, but basically a family in Oregon.
Mm-hmm.
They have a son named Jadin.
Mm-hmm.
Jadin is bullied for being gay.
Mm-hmm.
Jadin kills himself. And his father, Joe Bell, decides to walk across the country to raise awareness for bullying or anti-bullying.
His goal is to walk from Oregon to New York, where his son had been wanting to go to school. Unfortunately, he doesn't get very far on his trip because while he's walking down the highway, a semi strikes Joe Bell and kills him. Mm-hmm. The end. Yeah, sure. That's
right.
That's the
okay.
The nitty gritty. Yeah.
That's the nitty gritty. All right. So Mark Wahlberg,
mm-hmm.
who initially, when I heard about the story, I was intrigued.
Of course.
Because I don't see him as like I wasn't surprised that he played this role. I just didn't really picture him doing it. Like, yeah. I don't see him as like a homophobe or anything. He just seemed a little too cool and young to play this character. And it kind of translates like, so when Jadin comes out to his father,
mm-hmm.
it's pretty uneventful.
Mm-hmm.
Because Joe Bell is watching like a football game with like his buddies and the family, and Jadin's being very pensive, like, Dad, I need to talk to you. Can it wait? No, I need to talk to you now. Okay. They go in the kitchen with the mom, and Jadin explains, like, the kids at school are picking on me because I'm different, and his dad's like, well, you gotta, you gotta learn how to fight, or didn't I teach you how to fight? And he goes, no, I can't help it because I'm gay.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking, okay, there's a movie based on this man's reaction and then subsequent reaction to his son committing suicide. I assumed Joe Bell was going to go off,
mm-hmm.
call him all kinds of names and blah, blah, blah. But he doesn't. He tells him he still loves him. Mm-hmm. He's still his son. But, you got to keep this shit to yourself, basically. Like, don't let these kids know your business and they'll leave you alone. You just got to be tough. Mm-hmm. And that's it.
Yeah.
So that was interesting.
Sure.
The twist of the film is that... Oh, go ahead.
No, because I think that's even a flashback at that point, because we see them on the walk.
That's the twist of the film. Mm-hmm. We see Jadin walking with his dad,
mm-hmm.
and they have some cute moments, like they do their little karaoke version of Lady Gaga's Born This Way. We see Jadin in a hotel room with his dad.
Mm-hmm.
His dad is getting ready, like getting dressed up to go to a gay bar to meet with some people about his like what would you call what he's doing?
His upcoming he gives speeches.
He doesn't have an organization, but
just
this shit he's on. He's going to this place talking to people.
Well, they refer to it as a forgiveness walk.
His forgiveness walk.
A walkabout.
Anyway, they have some cute exchanges, Jadin and his father. But when Joe Bell is at the gay bar, because when they're in the hotel, Jadin explains, like, you're going to get hit on, and they have a cute sort of exchange about that. So when Joe Bell is at the bar by himself, a drag queen does hit on him, and, he takes it in stride, like, mm-hmm. he's very gracious about it. But then the drag queen is saying, like, oh, is your son, like, half as cute as you are? Mm-hmm. And that's when Joe Bell explains, my son is dead. So all of the scenes we see with Joe Bell walking with his son is really just like a figment of his imagination. Mm-hmm. So obviously that's the liberty the filmmaker's taking, because we don't know.
There's a lot of conjecture.
Yeah.
It's sanitized a bit, but...
So just going down my list really quickly, I thought Mark Wahlberg is Joe Bell because I don't know how much information they are taking from the family and recollections of how Joe Bell was, but Mark Wahlberg's characterization of him, he's cute and kind of funny.
He is, but he's also doing his thing. He does that working class thing and all these based on a true story heroic films he makes. And it's kind of transposed on this, which works well enough.
Yeah. I kind of thought the character playing Jadin looks like Adam Rippon.
I thought so. Reid Miller.
I thought he did a good job. Mm-hmm. Yeah. The scene where they sing Born This Way, that was a little cringy.
That was a little cringeworthy. I understood the intention. You know, this was written by Larry McMurtry and Diana Ossana, who, of course, wrote and won an Oscar for writing Brokeback Mountain.
So, as we were about to wrap up watching this film, which we did watch a while ago, and I don't know when we're going to be able to post this video because it doesn't have a release date, right? No. So, just know that. I recall thinking, like, this kind of feels a little dated because it's set in the late 2000s, right? Because when did Born This Way come out?
It's set... Born This Way was like 2011.
So it's like 2013?
This is 2013 when this happened.
Yeah, so it kind of reads like late 90s, but it's not. So when you told me who wrote it, I'm like, oh, it kind of makes sense that...
Yes.
I don't know.
Which is very funny. Larry McMurtry I grew up with because my parents were huge fans of Lonesome Dove, the book and the television series. But Larry McMurtry's been an excellent screenwriter for years. He wrote The Last Picture Show, the Bogdanovich film from '71, and many, many others. But so it does seem a little bit like it was written by people that aren't exactly living, like they don't have first-hand knowledge, perhaps. But that's okay.
There's a scene where Jadin's ghost and Joe Bell walk into a diner, and there's some information on the TV, like the news, and like one of the patrons of the diner uses the word faggot, I think. Mm-hmm. So of course, like Joe Bell has a reaction, but he kind of doesn't do anything. But Jadin says, like, aren't you going to do something? So his dad walks up to the guy and says, like, I appreciate if you wouldn't say that. Here's my card. You know, you should read what I'm about. And that's it. Mm-hmm. So when Jadin and Joe Bell go outside, Jadin's like, you told me to fight, so why aren't you going to fight? Mm-hmm. Which I thought was interesting. Like, you want your dad to get into a fist fight in the diner?
But come to find, that's his inner monologue that he's having with himself. So I think that there are layers to this film that, you know, you might not see on a first watch. But also there are things we don't get into. Like Connie Britton is Lola Bell, the mother, who we're told has a drinking issue. But we're told
she has a drinking issue. There are references to their marriage kind of being on the rocks. Mm-hmm. It's also odd that the mother seems very supportive of her son. But when Joe Bell goes to do this forgiveness walk, she seems bothered by it. Like she doesn't understand why he's doing it, mm-hmm. which I thought was interesting.
Well, because she also brings one of the bullies leaves a note at Jadin's grave that she brings when she visits Mark Wahlberg at one of his stops, and he like flies into a rage, and she's kind of like, well, clearly whatever you're out here doing hasn't worked yet. Right. Which there are. You know, it is a very interesting, aggressive take on somebody trying to deal with their grief, and out of guilt too for not having done enough as a father protecting his son. So it is very touching, and I think
it is very touching.
And you know, when towards the end of the film, I think there are two well-staged scenes. One is with Gary Sinise, who shows up.
That's right. So Joe Bell is out. He's out like on the highway with his little like he's walking around with like a stroller, it looks mm-hmm. like, with all his stuff in it, and he's sitting by the side of the road, and a sheriff truck comes up, and it's obvious that he's used to getting pulled over by the police. Like, what are you doing walking down the highway? So he explains to Gary Sinise's character, like, this is what I'm doing. So the sheriff like brings him back to his to the sheriff's office
to give him a meal,
and then he shares with him what you were going to say.
That his son was also gay and coming to grips with it. So I thought it was very interesting, and probably what makes this film more important than any lobbying against its quality is that you have these two straight men talking in very vulnerable capacity about their gay children.
Yeah, I think the impact and the power of this film transcends the quality of it. I think the fact that it might reach an audience who might not normally embrace this idea is very, like it's great. So for that reason, I would recommend it.
Which, I think, it's also like Sigourney Weaver in Prayers for Bobby, which is a Lifetime movie, and it does feel like a Lifetime Prayers for Bobby, and this one kind of does too. But, her sentiment for doing that film was, this can be used as a tool for people to say, like, hey, remember this actress? Remember, like, Mark Wahlberg, we can watch this as a family. It's going to reach people that you wouldn't expect it to. It's not just preaching to the choir. So I do really appreciate that. But I did like the scene. It's his last speech, and it's kind of given in that cliche way before the great tragedy happens to him. But I really liked the reflection of what he's saying, which is the first time he seemed kind of eloquent.
Because Joe Bell is not a great speaker.
No.
In fact, the first time we see him speak, I wrote down, he is a terrible speaker.
Yes. But
anyway.
You see the reflection in some of the students' eyes, and you can see him in the camera honing in on the looks on some of these boys' faces that we're meant to read are clearly gay, and it's meaningful for them to hear this father saying that. It
was meaningful to me as a 40-something gay man watching this movie. Like, I did feel things.
Yeah, of course.
Especially, I think the most emotional scene is when Jadin... There's an incident where Jadin is bullied, and he just wants to get away. So he calls his best friend, who it's obvious he spends a lot of time with her and her family. So he calls her to say, like, could you please come pick me up? Or no, he says, can I spend time with you? And she's like, well, we're going out of town. But she tells her mom, who's driving the car, hey, let's turn around and pick up Jadin. And the mom's like, no. Like, not like she doesn't like him, but just like, can we do something without him? We'll see him when we get back on Monday. So then Jadin's distraught. He goes to a park and ultimately hangs himself. I thought that scene where he was calling for help was...
he does a good job, that kid.
That kid is acting a little hard out.
And, I think, I wish, and perhaps maybe from some younger writers, would have been able to get into how social media, while charts our progression as a culture, also is used as a tool of spreading hatred. Because if I had been growing up when I was in high school, there weren't cell phones and the internet for everybody to reach me at. So whether or not people knew I was gay or thought I was gay, I still had a safe space at home. But this is a child that was, harassed on the platforms that they're all tuned into at all times.
What I think is missing from this film is, Jadin, we do see him get picked on a couple of times. He does have a little boyfriend who's like on the football team. So, and doesn't seem to get a lot of smoke for that. But we do see him receiving like nasty messages via some social media platform. I wish the film would have spent a little more time just diving into the impact that had on him. Because it just makes his character seem so fragile, but he's not. Like, he's a very charismatic, well-spoken kid who seems kind of fearless because he shows up at like a Halloween party, dressed kind of faggy. So it just...
I think he's David Bowie.
So to me it was like, oh, this kid is brave. So I wanted... Like, obviously he was hurting inside to do this, but the film doesn't really show that. It just happens all of a sudden. Like, he gets rejected to hang out with his friend and goes and kills himself. Also, I feel like Joe Bell's reasoning for why he goes on this forgiveness walk is very obvious, but I don't think there's not a lot of depth to it.
Sure.
So that is lacking for me. What would you give this film?
Well, I first wanted to mention this director's brother is also a film director, Rashad Ernesto Green, and it's very familiar to Rashad Ernesto Green directed a film in 2011 called Gun Hill Road, starring Esai Morales as this father who gets out of prison and is dealing with his son's transition.
Oh.
Which, to me, and that was a bit ahead of the curve and made in the time that this is actually set. But also would recommend checking that out. I would give Good Joe Bell 2.5 out of 5.
Oh, 2.5?
Yeah.
Oh, I was going to give it 3 now.
Oh, you can? Go ahead. We don't have to give the same score.
Oh, I'm going to give it 3 out of 5.
Okay.
Because I think it's important. These, even though the story's kind of basic and not very well told, I think the fact that you have like an A-list straight male actor in this film is really great. So check it out.
Well, and it's fun, it ends on such a dark note, really, but it starts out with that very nice Walt Whitman quote about keep your face always towards the sunshine.
Oh, yes. Anything else?
No, that's it.
Bye.
Bye.